Good evening, everyone. I know some are still connecting and joining. Will be the conservation meeting. We'll begin in a moment here, just getting everybody into the meeting. Oh, Carl. Forgot about Carl. Actually, Chuck, it was
What are we doing?
good. Carl is our fourth full member.
I think we're ready to go.
Carl, are you connected?
I keep hitting Ryan or Peter. I think I'm trying to hit Carl.
Give him another second here. Carl, are you connected to sound? Chuck, I don't know
Sure.
if something's going on with Carl
Carl?
here, but we've got 3 voting members and 2 associates. Are we able to start that way?
We need Carl to call in. So he needs to be part of the meeting.
Indeed.
1, 2, 3. Hmm.
All right, sorry about that. I just spoke with him. He's having a computer issue. He's going to be on in a second here.
Sounds good. So I can just start. This part isn't recorded anyways. And start of the recording when we do the meeting. So hello everyone. This is Chuck Taroni, the Reading Conservation Administrator. Consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and allowing us to adhere to social distancing requirements during the COVID-19 crisis, the Town of Reading Conservation Commission meeting is being held virtually via Zoom for audio and video participation of the Conservation Commission applicants and their representatives and the public. When you enter the meeting, you were automatically muted and your video is automatically disabled. During the meeting, myself or the commission chair will unmute the commission applicants and representatives and the members of the public individually as we need during the meeting. Commissioners, applicants, and representatives will be the only attendees permitted to share videos. These controls are in place to ensure that tonight's meeting is safe and effective at all times. I would like to confirm that all members are here and participating in tonight's agenda, but we're going to wait for Carl on that. So all the materials for this meetings are available on the Conservation Division site, and I recommend that commission members and the public follow the agenda as posted on the Town of Reading website, unless otherwise noted. However, because this meeting is being conducted remotely, I advise applicants in particular that the commission cannot discuss or consider documents which were not previously posted. Information may, however, be presented orally. Similarly, members of the public are encouraged to provide written public comments, but should understand that not all participants nor all commission members will be able to see any written comments during the course of this meeting. Before we start tonight's meeting, I'm going to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business to ensure that accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair or the conservation minister yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. After the commission makes their remarks, these have been addressed by the applicant. The chair or the conservation administrator will afford the public comments as follows. The chair or the conservation administrator will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify themselves. Once the chair and the conservation administrator has a list of the public comments, the chair will call on each name and afford 4 minutes for any comments. The applicant may be requested to respond to the chair or the administrator. After the public comments, the chair or the conservation administrator will once again will go down the line of commissioners, inviting each one of them to provide further comments, questions, or motions. Please hold on until your name is called. Finally, each vote is taken during this meeting. We will conduct a roll call vote. For anyone who speaks during tonight's meeting, please remember that to mute your phone, your computer when you are not speaking. You can also turn off the video in advance. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. All right, Mike, that was that, except for the roll call.
All right, thank you, Chuck. So this is the June 10th, 2020 conservation meeting. This is our third meeting that we've had through Zoom. So I think we figured out several of the issues, although as you can see, things still come up. So the ground rules are certainly important. Chuck continues to do a lot to keep these meetings going and frankly, the day-to-day running as smoothly as we can. So I thank him for that continued success. We're going to run through the process here, but before I do, I just want to introduce the members of the commission that are present. For the commission members, remember this order because this is the order that we'll end up voting as we go forward. So I'm Michael Flynn, Chair of the Commission. Our vice chair is not here this evening, but we can continue from there. Martha?
Martha Moore, member of the commission.
Carl?
Hi, Carl Ciccone, member of the commission.
John?
John Sullivan, member of the commission.
Scott?
Scott Keith, associate member.
And Nicola?
Nicola Meserve, associate member.
Great. Thank you, guys. With that, we can... Chuck, do you have anything else before we start the first hearing?
No, I covered it all. The first hearing is going to, well, you can just start in on the first hearing, and I'm going to call it the
so
agenda.
zero Haverhill Street. This is a continued hearing for a notice of intent. Mark Hall, this has actually been continued until our June 24th meeting.
June 24th.
So the first item on the agenda, being at least 7:15, will be 48 Pasture Road. We'll open the public hearing for a notice of intent filed by Joseph Ciccarello under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The project includes the demolition of an existing deck and the construction of an addition with a platform deck within the buffer zone and the BVW. We'll let the applicant present the project. If the commission has any questions, I can cycle through if there's any questions, and then we'll take questions from the public if there's any options. So with that, I'll let Joseph, if you'd like to present your project. Before we begin, just as a reminder, and Chuck said this, but documents for each one of these projects is available on the conservation webpage on the Town of Reading website. So if you'd like to follow along with some of the documents or see the project documents, they're available there. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thank you. I believe Jack Sullivan is on. Jack supported me through the process and was going to take the lead and present it unless you want me to go ahead and do that. I'm not sure what the right protocol is, so I'll defer to the commission.
I did talk to Jack this afternoon. He was going to call in, so keep your eyes open for that. And I did tell him that our first agenda item did continue to the 24th.
Okay, Jack, are you on?
Yeah.
Great, good. Do you want to start?
Can everyone see the plan? No, okay. Let's do it again. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you.
Great, Jack, are you on? The plan is up.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For the record, Jack Sullivan, I'm owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group. Just to give some background on this project, the owner, there's an existing deck to the rear of the house. He's basically looking to remove that, construct an addition, basically in the same area of that existing deck, and construct a small deck with a set of steps down to an existing paver patio area. Norris Environmental did the wetland delineation back in April. As you can see from the plot plan, the closest point of the full addition is 50 feet from the BVW. In the platform / deck is about 46 feet from the BVW. There's no trees to be cut as part of this project. You can see we show a 12-inch diameter mulch sock to be placed at the limit of work area. I showed a construction entrance on the left side of the house, and we don't anticipate soil stockpiles being needed, but I did show a proposed soil stockpile area in the front yard. To provide some drainage mitigation for this project, the roof runoff will be captured by a 2-foot by 2-foot stone drip trench along the roof drip line that Chuck's showing now. As far as there'll be limited to 0 grade changes associated with this project, and the addition's going to match the existing first floor grade of the existing home. And I'll turn it back to the commission for any questions they might have.
All right, thanks, Jack. I guess I'll start with a question. As far as the drainage, so the drip, you've got a 2-by-2 trench that's going around the entrance. I know generally we see your projects, they include some sort of larger storage. Is there a reason for just the trench on this project?
To be effective, Michael,
Yep.
we probably have a high groundwater table. There were no soil testing done on this. If you look at some of the BVW grade is basically elevation 99, and in the area of where the addition's going, we're basically at 101. So if I did a full depth dry well with coverage, I'd be into the water table. So I was trying to provide something even, typically, you're right, I do a dry well or some sort of Cultec unit. In this case, it seemed to make sense for a drip trench.
Okay. I don't really have any other questions. I mean, this, as far as I'm concerned, was pretty straightforward. Do any of the other commission members have questions?
So if you have a question, if you're muted, if you can just raise your hand function. And I was going to let...
All the commission members are actually unmuted right now, Chuck.
Oh, okay. So 22 Pasture Road, which is just down the street, we did a very similar drip trench for that project.
Okay.
So I think that is currently being installed, but it was something that we approved for this same area.
Okay. Go ahead, Martha.
I just want somebody who knows the regulations better than I do. Are there any issues with the regulations? It seems like being outside the 35 foot that I don't think there are, but does anybody know?
Well, so 35 foot is our inside the 35 foot is a no structure zone, and inside the 25 foot is a zone of natural vegetation. And typically in Reading, if you're on existing lawn and you're outside the 35 foot area, we have many projects out there that have been approved in that situation. So as far as our bylaw, it meets the standards with the setbacks, so no variance was needed. As you can see, this existing paver patio encroaches into the 35 foot by just a little bit, but it's on site and it exists now.
Any other questions? All right, Chuck, we want to try our first questions from the public.
Yeah, sounds good.
Do you have anything else, Chuck, I guess?
Not for me.
Can I just make one other comment? I seem to
Martha.
have lost my raise hand function when Chuck made his screen share. So I don't know how to find raise hand, and maybe that's true of the members of the audience as well. When the little squares of people all got small, my participants window went away and the raise hand is in the participants window. So you might want to unscreen share Chuck's screen in case people are trying to raise their hand and don't have a way to do so.
Sure. I don't see like the other option to do it, so okay.
If you go to the bottom of the screen and go on participants, if you click on that, a box will open up, and at the bottom of that box, it says raise hand.
Okay.
Thank you, Jack. So, Chuck, what's the best way to do this for, now, have we been unmuting all, or we've been just asking the raise the hand function?
Well, I think they can all raise their hand if they need to have a question about this agenda item, because no one's on the phone except for Jack.
Yep.
So it would work.
Great. So I'm not seeing any questions.
Oh.
Chuck, this is a notice of
I see
intent,
another.
correct?
What's that?
This is
Are
a
we-
notice of intent. So this is a notice of go ahead, Martha.
I don't see that we're recording. Did Chuck start recording this?
Thank you, Martha. Okay.
All right, so Chuck, you don't have anything, so I mean.
No, I don't.
Seems pretty clearly straightforward, but guys, I mean, at this time, so this is a notice of intent. My suggestion would be that we begin to prepare the order of conditions so that it's ready for next meeting, and but because whether it's closed now or closed then doesn't really make a difference. My suggestion would be that we continue with no further comments, but allow the door to be open in case there is public comment that wasn't able to be heard. We can hear it at the next meeting. At this point, I guess that's my recommendation, because I don't think I can see the names. I don't know that we're seeing any other indication of comment or questions. I don't think we have many questions from the commission on this one. So with that, do I hear a motion? Anybody?
I'll move to continue to June 24th.
Second.
All right. Michael Flynn in favor?
Martha Moore
Martha?
in favor.
John Sullivan in favor?
Carl Sacconi in favor.
Great. So I will prepare the order of conditions for the June 24th meeting. It doesn't seem like there are any questions, so we'll just see if the audience or the abutters would come up at that meeting and have any more questions. If not, we'll take another vote to close.
There's always the opportunity to email the conservation division, in between meetings if there was a comment that you felt needed to get in as well. So. All right. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to our next item on the agenda. This is 0 Charles Street. This is Charles Lawn Cemetery. We'll open the public hearing for an RDA request for determination of applicability, filed by the DPW, Chris Cole. This is for the removal of 36 trees of various size and DBH around the perimeter slope of the Charles Lawn Cemetery, and trim 9 additional trees in the same area. Portions of the tree work in the area have already begun prior to the application. All of the work is within the 100-foot buffer zone to the BBW at the Charles Lawn Cemetery. The application and the plans can be viewed on the conservation page under the current project, map 34, lot 61, and it's RDA file 2020-3. Chris, before I turn it over to you, I'll just kind of give a little background here. So this started probably at the beginning of the COVID, sometime in March, I believe. We got a call indicating there was some tree removal at the Charles Lawn Cemetery. From that, we were able to, the conservation, both myself, Chuck, and Anika, the vice chair, were able to meet with the DPW, Chris, Jane Kinsella, Mike, Hannaford, the tree warden, and other members of the forestry division to go through the project, what they had done, what's been already done, and what's planned to occur. Based on what we saw, we felt like the right move moving forward was to put in an RDA. I know when the item first came up, we brought it to the attention of the entire commission and asked the commission members to go out there to take a look. So this project here is essentially the entire work encapsulated into what needs to go on at the Charles Street Cemetery. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris to present what you're looking to do. Go ahead, Chris.
And if I may ask if you might be able to unmute Jane Kinsella, and I'm not sure if Mike Hannaford is joining in, but if he joins in, if you could unmute him as well.
Sure, I think I got Jane.
Yeah, I'm
Jane,
not
on the line.
I don't see Mike.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if Mike's there yet. He might not be coming. I'm not sure. But I can start anyway. So thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission members. Before you tonight, an RDA filed by the Reading DPW to remove and trim several hazardous and invasive trees, limbs, and growth around the perimeter of Charles Lawn Cemetery, as determined by Mike Hannaford, the town's tree warden. Several of the trees and limbs identified pose an immediate safety risk to both DPW employees who perform the maintenance work in the cemetery, as well as the general public. There are also additional trees identified to be removed, and while not a safety concern, trees will greatly contribute to the structural demise of a portion of the stone retaining wall butting Charles Street, if they're not addressed now as well. All of the proposed trims and removals are located within the 100-foot buffer zone, which is illustrated on the locust map in your packet. And with that, I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Mike, can you let me know if you can see the aerial photo?
Sorry.
Chair Flynn?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I went back to it on mine. Yeah, I can see. All right. So, Chris, there's a list of 36, 36 here. Now, on Area 1, I think my understanding is these are items that are still to be removed.
Correct. These are all
really gotten
all items to still be removed. Correct.
Okay. So this doesn't necessarily include what has been removed already. And I think most of that activity, from what we've seen, was along that Area 1 alignment. Maybe some if we're looking at, so Area 1's on the
I'm going to switch around with some photos.
Oh, yeah, that's good. So this is the Area 1. So I think that what we were called about was really this area here, some significant overgrowth. My understanding is these were, hanging in and started to be cleared. Most of the rest of the work when we went through the walk, I think has been mostly limb, with the exception of, Chuck, I don't know if you've got a good picture of the removal at the wall. I think that was a big portion of the list that is removed. This 123.
I do not have a picture of after.
Okay.
So these pictures, and I hope you guys can see them because I'm never sure about that, are just from the street, and it shows prior to the work. So are you seeing these pictures?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is north, and we have the other one I was showing before was south, and this is what it looked like prior to any of the work. It would be great to have a picture of what it looks like now, but at the tree row, there is a steep bank down to a wetland in most areas. So just at the bank, the edge of the bank starts off the wetland, and most of the trees that were up along the top and down along that bank were removed. We never got a count on how many were moved, but as you can see, there was quite a few there. So I'm showing more of a north picture, the north entrance. I hope that switched over because I didn't re-screen share. And I'll just go to this photo now. So now we should be looking at the aerial photo. And as Chris explained, it shows the jurisdictional areas.
No, we're still on the picture, Chuck.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, may I just say something for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
That Chuck was just referring to the trees on the right-hand side being removed. Nothing over on the right-hand side has been, no work has been completed over there yet. The only work that you saw that was anything was done was on the left side of the cemetery.
Okay.
Area 4, correct, Chris?
Yeah, so area 4 hasn't started yet. Is that what you said, Chris?
Correct.
Okay. And is
for-
two
for
has
the
started though?
Some may have been started in area 1, but most of it was in area 2, I should say, but most of it was in area 1.
So the work, so correct me if I'm wrong, the work I know about is in area 1, and then as area 1 extends down on that red line in between area 1 and 2, there was work pulling some material and some storage containers or Jersey barriers out to about the edge of, just a little bit into that area between those two areas, and then pretty much to about, let's see if I can use this annotation thing.
The Jersey barriers were pulled out to where you see the pavement end.
Yeah, about right here. Can you see that? So
yeah,
so they pulled everything out, regraded that area, and did you seed it, Chris? Did you plant trees on?
We haven't done any more work out there, Chuck.
So at this point, it's been graded, and it's maybe ready for the next step. And just about where this
we were out there, I think we had talked about just ways to move some of the silt fencing or hay bales that were out there to help prevent some erosion, but otherwise,
we have put that erosion. We put the crushed stone down and the straw wattle in since we were out there.
So yeah, the water comes down this road and it looks like it gets in there. It's a tough problem to solve, but what was happening is it was getting into the wetland down in this area, and there was it was a good covering of it that had got down there. So we asked them to correct that, and I believe that that's happened. Along area 2, my recollection is just about here is where, because I was asking about, in that area, I was asking about, are you going to fill these trees in? And then I was worrying about shading on the wetland. And so this is where I'm going to say the work stopped, kind of in this area here.
Yeah, that's probably about correct. Somewhere in there.
All right. So the red line is the BVW, and the black line is the 100-foot buffer zone.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and yeah, that's about all I have. We did walk through, and we talked about every one of these trees here. And the ones that have asterisks again next to them mean that they need to be removed quickly. They're more urgent than the other ones without that notation.
Correct.
So there's 45 trees. Some will be trimmed. I think it was something around only 7 or 10 of them were going to be trimmed, and the rest are going to be removed along with everything else that had already been removed. That's what I know about the project. So Mike, if you want to.
Yeah, so before I open up to the rest of the commission, I guess I just have a couple questions. Chris, so generally with projects like this, with this much removal, we have some sort of replacement policy to come and, to get growth, encourage growth again, to encourage shading. For most of these, particularly in the back corner, and maybe I'm at an advantage because I was able to walk with you guys. I think from what I've seen, what you plan to do, the work that was done in area 2 and the work left to be done in area 2, 3, and 4, primarily is trimming from my view. The work in area 5 is the removal of a good quantity of smaller diameter trees, but they're right up against a retaining wall, and it's understandable that if we continue to let them grow, the retaining wall is going to just get destroyed. But along area 1, the work, particularly the work that's already been done, there's been a pretty significant clearing on that slope. And so is there a way, is there a plan to provide some sort of replanting or new coverage, understanding that there's been significant taking there?
Well, I mean, I would have to confer with Mike Hannaford on any new plantings that he will do in the future. But I mean, anything that was removed there, Mr. Chair, was only invasive vines, growths, dead trees that were posing a hazard, a safety risk to anyone walking in the cemetery. So it wasn't like we removed anything that was healthy. Anything we removed was already dead or invasive that was becoming a hazard. And I haven't been out there recently, but from what Mike Hannaford says, the vines that they cut down out there, you might be able to go out there now or later this summer, and you wouldn't even know that they have been there. It's going to grow back. So,
Yeah. So is it like unattainable to maintain some sort of growth along that bank? I mean, I look at this and this photo Chuck has, and it is healthy, or it's green, it's filled. I understand, at a certain point, some of these are coming in or hanging over the bank, so there's reason to trim. But I mean, it doesn't look like this anymore, and it's allowing a lot more light into the wetland. It's allowing, there's a lot less, tree buffer and coverage that's getting towards the wetland. So I'd like to see something put back. I'd like to have, and granted, Mike's got experience in this, so hopefully it can be something that's manageable, something where, we're not talking about doing this again in 5 years, but understanding that maintenance is maintenance, but, I'd like to be able to see that something is going back and we're not just taking some major clearing all the way down that riprap slope. I mean, you can see that these are the trees, while many of them are small DBH, some of the ones in the area that you can see, that's at the top of the slope. I mean, you almost have to get to the bottom to see anything now on this right side. I'm sorry, this left side. I think most of, again, I said, Chris, most of what I saw beyond this is trimming. It's not a lot of clearing. It is branches that are leaning in, or it's the trees against the wall. But it's this side that seems to be, you know, a lot was taken. And I'd like to try to make sure we have that coverage and buffer. So
I mean, I think the problem along the left side there is a lot of that is that invasive vine, and if you don't keep cutting down the vine or removing the roots system, it's simply going to keep growing up and essentially choking out the healthy trees and killing them off. So that's why you have to keep cutting down the vines to prevent that, and that's all Mike was doing.
So
is there a way? Go ahead.
So there's a lot of, I would say that I wish I had a picture of how it looks now, because it's these trees that are here, that these smaller ones don't exist. And the sunlight is going right down the bank to the bottom. So something was taken out beyond the vines. But I did want to kind of bring this back to our regulations, and that in section 2D J, normal maintenance, that we actually propose in our regulations that if you are cutting trees within the first 25 feet, it has to be, you have to propose replacement. So this is the Town of Reading Wetlands Protection Bylaw and regulations.
I mean, I can talk to Mike Hannaford and see if there are any areas that we might be able to install some trees in the cemetery, but, you know, I believe that it is a cemetery and much of it is already laid out for cemetery plots, so it's, you know, might be very difficult to add any new trees that are not already established there.
Yeah, I would not ask him to put anything on the edge of lawn. When he goes out to look at areas, could he look at shrubs also and on that bank? That's probably would be a better spot, because then it could be left alone and maybe he could pick something out that wouldn't have to be maintained every year.
Do you mean just shrubs chuck along the top of bank along the perimeter of the cemetery?
Yeah, we encourage trees and shrubs, so both are a viable option. So if that is something that could be thought about as walkthrough was done, it would be great.
Chuck, maybe I can share screens.
Can you?
If I can figure it out.
Let me get out of it so you can.
All right. This is a photo I took in March. Hold on, Martha.
Hi.
Go ahead,
I
Martha.
was just going to say, I took photos on March 11th and emailed them to Chuck at the meeting that night, but yours is better than mine, so never mind.
Wow.
So I think we can see, you know, that there's, if you look in, there's some larger trees and you know, I think a lot of these, you're probably right, Chris, we're starting to be overtaken by, there was vinage in there. But I mean, you can see how much this has really opened up the area. And you know, I think when we were out there, you guys were able to give us kind of a good history of how this was built. You know, the cemetery, my understanding is essentially, I mean, this rock wall was essentially supposed to be where the limits of that cemetery was, and I think they just filled essentially to the you know, they kept on bringing in fill, and going to the rock, which is why you see this riprap slope here.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, as it currently stands, I mean, this is a lot more open than it's been historically, and so it's allowing a lot in. I think there's got to be some options for getting something in here, and what I'd like to see, I mean, obviously, is something manageable. I mean, we certainly want to work with you and Mike of what we can get that is manageable, so that you're not taking those down in 5 years. That's certainly not the what we're looking for.
But I think, Mr. Chair, that, you look along where it looks so open right there. And like I said, I haven't been out there, in the past several weeks, but you could go out there now or sometime mid-July and those vines could be right back up again, just fully taken over. That's what Mike was saying, is that it grows so fast in there that, you cut it down in the spring and it's back right up there in the summer.
Yeah, Chair Flynn, I would say that it might be worth going out there again and seeing what it looks like now, and then maybe we can get some more information about some shrubs or some trees and some areas where that those could go in. Understanding that it's a high use area.
Yeah, and I mean, this is an RDA, Chuck. I mean, I'm hoping to know what the other commissioners think, but I mean, ultimately, this is an RDA, so we do have the option to put like some flexible conditions on the RDA, correct, Chuck?
We do. It's been our past practice to have conditions. Part of the request for determination, and I think that if we came to an agreement, the DPW department would be able to meet that. So I'm not concerned about that at all.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the commission?
I mean, can I?
Go ahead, Carl.
It seems like from the top of the riprap to the top of the bank, where you could see that it was once shaded and sort of forest floor there. It seems like, I know in the background, the riprap rises there, but there seems like there's plenty of 6 to 8 feet of room for some pretty big shrubbery that could be back there. If the vines have to fight through the riprap to get there, maybe with some annual maintenance, I mean, that could be dealt with, but there's good sun there now for these shrubs to take and provide some habitat there. And aesthetically, it is a cemetery, so there's lots of beautiful flowering shrubs that could also just maybe even look appealing too. So.
Yeah, and Chris, maybe and can answer this. I don't want to speak for the commission, but I remember what they told me when we were out there is basically everything that was flat was in a plan to be eventually usable space as part of the cemetery.
Correct. Yeah, that is correct.
So I know there needs to be some thought into that. I don't know as far as timeline what that means, but certainly we want to work around that and what the true planning for the cemetery use is.
Was this in an effort to gain? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Carl.
Was this in an effort to gain that room for future plats and?
No.
Maintenance.
It was just maintenance because it was encroaching into the cemetery and causing a safety issue for anyone in the cemetery.
Including mowing. They couldn't mow.
Right.
I think one of the things that I heard when we were out there on our site visit is the DPW is not expecting to do this. Like, this will not be needed in the near future, and it might be many years before they have to cut it back like this. But there is that 1/3 of section 2 and all of 3 that will be cut back. So we're at a good point to take another site visit, see section 1 that's grown in, and see what it looks like, and maybe we would, gain some perspective from that, and then maybe Chris can come back with a suggestion of where some plants could go and how many could go in and some sizes. And that section is section 1J1 under normal maintenance. And what it pulls out is that a few things are allowed, as you would expect, as normal maintenance. But when you get close to the resource area, it tightens up a little bit, and it says within 25 feet of the resource area, it's not allowed without tree replacement being proposed. So,
I mean, we would have to take a look at this with Mike Hannaford, because I know there are very extreme limited amount of areas within the cemetery that will allow for any new planting because of the cemetery plots.
No, and I think there's room to work in. I want to reiterate. We talked about this a little bit on the walk. There's obviously levels of I think most of these, as you mentioned, were safety concerns from a long-term standpoint of that they're starting to lean or they're starting to come over. What I had offered at the walk is that if there's something that's an imminent hazard, we shouldn't be waiting on that. That's imminent hazards. We want to make sure we're safe. But understanding that this is overgrown and they're causing health issues, we certainly understand that there's that medium hazard zone of what this is becoming a hazard. There will be eventually a time when this is a danger, and we need to take care of that. And that's my understanding of what these trees are, and what this management is for. And so, I think we're on the right track. I do want to see, hopefully what I'm looking for personally is what the final product, a final product that is going to be manageable, but also provides protection to the wetlands, also provides that coverage that was there at the time. Because I think what we've got right now is a significant clearing, at least along Area 1. Are there any other comments from the commission? Yeah.
hearing none.
So hopefully we can, this can come back with a good planting plan and something that can be manageable. Does that make sense, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we can have another site walk out there if that's what the commission wants. Meet with Mike Hannaford, see if he would have any recommendations for some sort of planting plan, what we could do out there. I'm not sure what we can do, but,
So it should be just confined to the bank. We made an agreement that we're not going to be having any jurisdiction within the lawn area of this cemetery or any cemetery. So don't hear that request, any other spot except for on that bank, Chris.
okay.
That's a good point, Chuck. All right, so Chris, and maybe we can set something up with Mike, and if you want to go up that you want to be out there too, we can.
Yep.
In particular, look at this area of what can come back as far as a planting plan.
Will the commission allow us? Will the commission allow us to do any of the work out there currently that's identified at least as the immediate safety, hazard that's identified in the list?
So I'm Chuck. I'll well, I'll ask the commission. I mean, I'm open to any of the items. You know, as far as the rest of the trees, my take, Chris, is that I'm fine with the list. I think you walked through. You and Mike were able to walk through each one of those. I think there's I think as Chuck said, I'm confident the two groups can come together and find a plan on that other side. So, I mean, I personally don't have an issue with anything else that's on that list as far as getting it, particularly the items that are starred if they're hazards.
I'm sorry, just correct me, Mr. Chair. The plantings, would they be only along area 1 on the left-hand side, or do you are looking for all the way around the perimeter?
We can look at it when we're out there. My big concern is the left-hand side. I mean, to me, that was the major clearing area. As far as those other areas, particularly, I think I went through 2, 3, and 4. To me, those have been mostly limbs or a single tree that's encroaching an area. This was the furthest and most amount of work into the bank and towards the bottom of the bank. And maybe it's not surprising, like this is the area where probably the vines are the worst, but it's the area that has, based on everything I've seen, is the plan has been to go in the most. So, Chuck, I guess my question, understanding that we can, I think we can come to agreement. I mean, is there a way to let the remaining of the trimming occur with a condition written associated with that replacement in accordance with the Reading bylaws needs to be met, and that's involved with site visit? I mean, we do that a lot with like a landscaping plan. We'll work with them as it goes to see what makes sense.
So I would say that all those, I'm going to say 46 trees. So it's, how many were on the list? Chris, do you know what the total list is? And
there were,
is it 46 or 56? Because it's like 7 or 10 last. So the normal maintenance section in our asked for, asked for replacing. So we're looking at, I mean, we're looking at 45 trees or something like 90 shrubs. That's what everyone else in town would be confronted with. I understand that you have a layout plan of where things can't go because of the cemetery plots and all that. So that's going to have to be taken into consideration. But those 45 trees that are coming down, they are subject to that section. And
yeah. Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Go ahead, Chris.
I really don't see why we should have to be expected to replant 90 shrubs. I mean, we can talk to my canopy about planting some shrubbery around the top of slope for shade and like you were referring to earlier, but I mean, anything that we're removing is already dead. We're not removing any healthy trees. So to ask us to put back 90 shrubs is unreasonable, I think.
so when I did
I don't know that it's true that anything that you're removing is already dead. I think there's trees that you've identified that are hazardous, that have overgrown, that are leaning in, that are starting to encroach on that grass area, which is why you feel it's presented a hazard. I don't know that means that they're dead. Dead trees we generally don't even count towards the list. A dead tree it's gone.
Well, that's what these trees were. They were dead or hazardous. I mean, Mike, the tree warden, does not remove healthy trees.
I think a lot of the that list was trimming, correct? Are you counting that also?
No, I counted up, I might have got it wrong, but there was 45 trees and there was like 30, 36, 7 of them were coming down.
There were 36 trees for removal and 9 trees being trimmed.
Yeah.
So, Jane, to your point, I mean, I felt like the removal quantity when we were out there didn't seem as high as what's indicated on this list. And I think maybe that's the benefit of another sidewalk of looking at why this one says remove versus, is this really just a trimming? Because I felt in particular, that a lot of what you showed us was, well, this is a trimming, not necessarily a full removal. So it's possible that quantity is less, but we've got to go off of what you presented. So.
Yeah, I think through the walk, I agree. Through the walk, I saw many more trees that he pointed out that needed to get trimmed, this limb, that limb, then removed.
Yep. All right. So, I mean, I think it's pretty clear. At this point, if the quantity is unclear and the numbers unclear, I mean, I know everybody's not excited about another site visit, but I think that seeing it and just walking through it is a large quantity. Obviously, you guys, I can tell, because you don't want to replace 45 trees or 9, the shrub equivalent. So let's make sure we're narrowing in on the number that needs to be replaced and what replacement makes sense. We've accepted alternatives from others, of this is what makes sense for replacement. The number, if the number is unmanageable, we don't want to replant a quantity just because it's a number. We want something that is going to function, that's going to protect the wetlands, that's going to provide that coverage. So, if I know our last visit was mostly focused on what has happened and the plans for trimming. If we go in there, at least now with a mindset, I guess what never was really discussed was what's proposed to meet the regulation. And if that's what we can do on this next one to make it clearer, then let's do what we need to do.
Mr. Chair, would the commission be acceptable to allowing Public Works to do the work they need to do based on this list, and then when we can do a additional site walk out there with Chuck and yourself and whoever from the commission and the rest of the other commission members to determine what plantings might be able to be done out there. Does that sound logical?
So before you answer, Mike, and I think there was some confusion between, we had a list and we walked out there and it seemed like there was a lot more trimming than there was removing. So that's my only hesitation on saying yes to the entire list or to the list. And I think I heard that from Mike too. I did make notes and I could try to find them, but it might be something that I could do tomorrow instead of in this meeting. I mean, Chris, you were there too. Does it seem right that there was, out of all that entire walk, we were only trimming 9 trees? Or did it seem like more? I remember a leader here had to come off and him and Mike keep saying stuff like that. I mean, if that's the list, then that is the list.
I mean, this is the list. When I asked Mike for the list, this is what he said was discussed at the site walk that day. Every location on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Chuck, Chris, is, what was presented to me at the site walk, I think seemed in line and made sense. What I'd like to do is confirm that something just isn't lining up. I mean, I felt like this was a lot more trimming. Go ahead, Martha.
When you look at the list, it often says remove left side of codominant Salix babylonica. So it says remove, but that's really not removing the whole tree. It's only half the tree. So that might explain some of it. But I'm also looking at area 5. Many of the trees that are being removed in area 5 are small and or invasive. And I thought that maybe invasive trees were things we don't really want. So maybe those wouldn't count, like a 1-inch ailanthus or a 1-inch Acer platanoides is an invasive tree. So that might explain some of the 45 versus less numbers.
So we protect all trees because the shading and the habitat that each one provides when we get into invasive shrubs and aquatic invasives, that's a different story. But like the Norway maple, we just can't turn our back on all the Norway maples. So that's not really something that's been done here in Reading in the Conservation Commission. Each tree is replaced. If you're taking down a Norway maple, you're putting in a native tree, and we benefit from that.
Okay. So then,
I do think Martha's first point may be correct, though, right? If I look at area 3, where it says remove 12-inch left side codominant, I think that makes sense with what Mike explained. Was those were areas where they had a split and one, something that was coming off, something was coming off.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, there are other areas too that you see it says remove leader, remove top of tree, so while it may say remove, in many of these, it's not the entire tree.
Okay.
yeah, that's what I was noticing, is that a lot of them, the word remove really means less than taking the tree out by the roots.
Yeah.
So I think what would be the best, my take, and it's for the commission, I mean, I think what would be the best plan, Chris, and maybe this can help you push a piece of this forward, is let's revisit this. Let's go out there with the intent of looking at what could be replanted, but let's revisit this list and maybe we can come to an agreement and highlight, the ones that this is a remove. This is actually removal versus this is just a codominant, because maybe that's what's part of the confusion here, is that with that total number that was said, these are 45,
Yeah.
maybe several of these aren't actually full removal, and that's just not popping out to me,
Right.
or is necessarily clear here.
So Mike, Chris, let me just, so I found my list and
Yep.
I have 25 trees on it. So,
Full removal.
well, I could have missed a few, but I would have had to have missed half. So that's what I'm noticing, is that I have 25 trees on my list. And it does say remove, and it does say trim, and it talks about, I just made quick notes, but so there is some
I think what happened too, Chuck, is, and I don't know if you took, I mean, to Martha's point, there was a lot along that. I mean, I'm seeing 22 trees along the retaining wall, all by itself. We may not have even tracked but that was the last area that we went to. We may not have even gotten to like that was, was that the area. I mean, I guess at this point, my take would be, I'm fine with moving ahead as long as there's before that happens, there's a site visit that just walks through this list again and it goes by this, make sure we agree what the definition of what you're trying to do on each one of these was. And then we can work at that same site visit, work with what the replacement can be. Does that make sense, Chris?
Well, Mr. Chair, I mean, I'm going through areas 1 through 4, and if you look at the list, there's probably only maybe 10, 12 locations in there that's physically removing a full tree. If you see most, anything that's removing a full tree, it says like remove 12-inch DBH. So you go through that list and there's only 10 locations in areas 1 through 4 that say that. Everything else is removing a leader, trimming this, trimming that. So I would just like to be able to proceed, as soon as we can with this work, because it really does need to be completed out there.
Yeah. Just in line with that, Chris, what I do want to make sure is like area 1, I think that's work that's left to be done and not necessarily the trees that have already been removed, right? So I don't.
Correct.
All right, so I mean, this is still, unless somebody has another, this is still leading to me that there needs to be a site visit. I mean, Chris, we can schedule it next week. I want to make sure we schedule it for you to keep this moving, but I do want to make sure we understand what's going on if there's some ambiguity with this list.
No, that's fine. We can meet out there next week. That's fine.
We not make it on Monday, but any other day would be great for me. So just want to put that out there.
Can we do Tuesday?
Well, I figured it would be Tuesday. Sooner the better. But yeah, Tuesday would be great.
Yeah. Let's try to plan for Tuesday morning, if that makes sense.
Carl, are you available in the morning?
I'm not available in the morning, but I could be available late morning to lunchtime.
I'd like to have Carl out there. Yeah.
I would like to.
No, I think that makes sense.
The work done. But I could also just come back at that time and run by as well. But I'd like to be there with you guys if that's.
No, late morning makes sense. I can do that.
Yeah.
Jane, does late morning work for you on Tuesday?
It would have to be. It'd have to be after 11:30 is the earliest. But do what works with you, and I'll grab Mike in if it.
Okay.
Scheduled. I think he should be all set.
Somewhere between 11 and 1, I can pretty much do so.
Okay.
Should we say 11?
Does any other commissioner want to go and have is it okay at 11?
I'd be happy to go if it's not too many of us. And 11 works for me.
I could just post it if we have more than a quorum.
That's the 16th, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't deliberate out on the site, you can go, but it's safe to post the site visit if it's over a quorum, which would be 4. Okay.
All right. I think we have a plan. Can I think we've hit this one enough. Can I have a motion on this?
You can continue.
Yeah, motion to continue.
So I'm hold on. A motion to continue. Let me get my agenda open here.
Charles Lawn Cemetery, 2003-3, 2020-3.
Second? So,
So Carl made the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
So John seconds.
All right, Michael Flynn, Chair.
oh, I can't hear any. Oh.
Martha Moore in favor.
Carl Sacconi in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jane.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Jane.
Mr.
Thanks.
Chair, what day was this continued till?
It's the next meeting's on the 24th, so June 24th this month.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay, we'll move on to our
Yeah.
next, it being,
Want me
Go ahead,
to
Jeff.
read this one, Mike, and give you a break?
sure.
So right now we're opening the, so we want to get John Ogren on and I think Joan, and then ask them who else is in their party. So right now we're going to be discussing 106 Colonial Drive. We're going to open a public hearing on a notice of intent filed by Marianne G. Reed under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Reading Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1, for the reconstruction of a failing retaining wall along with the associated replacement of damaged patio pavers and the removal of 5 nearby trees. The applicant may also consider constructing a pool within the patio area if feasible. All work is within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland at the Colonial Drive address. The application and plans can be seen on the Conservation Division page under current projects. The map number is 40, the lot number is 146, the file number is 2700733. Okay, Mike. Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I'm muted. All right, I'll, thank you, Chuck. I'll turn it over to the applicant.
I'm going to be bringing up the agenda, not the agenda, but let me get this. There you go. There you go.
Sorry, Marilyn is, I think that's, Marilyn, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, you've got a
Sounds-
significant echo.
I love that. Are you on speakerphone?
I am.
That might be the reason that's happening.
Yeah, no, I think I know what's wrong, so, and I'll,
Sounds better now.
okay.
Are you presenting the project? Do you have anybody else with you, or that we need
Peter
to unmute,
Ogren
or-
is, Peter Ogren is.
All right.
I thought I saw Peter right here.
Oh, he's in the waiting room. I got him in.
I see Peter's iPad right here. So, okay.
Peter, can you, I think you're unmuted.
Yeah, I believe I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, if you want to let me start the video too, although I just as soon have you put up the plan.
Is that you on the
Yeah, we've got-
iPad, Peter?
What's that?
Are you on the iPad?
I am on the iPad, Peter's iPad.
Okay. Yeah.
And I
Okay.
raised my hand.
So you should have Should have been request to start the video.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to present this project to the commission. My name is Peter Ogren, and I'm with Hayes Engineering, and I'm the engineer and the consultant on this project. And I know Marilyn Reed is on the call as well. Could you put up the plan?
That's not up for, okay, let's put up the plan.
I think it was presented.
It was up, but okay, yep.
There we go.
Thank you very much. This project has a number of facets to it, but the primary reason for bringing this project before the commission is that there's an existing retaining wall in the backyard, which is shown by the lighter shaded line in about the middle of the lot, which is failing. And I looked at it from a structural standpoint and decided that the best way to do this with a minimum amount of disruption, because the entire activity lies within the buffer zone, was to put an engineered wall in front of the existing wall to brace the existing wall, and it would be engineered large stones like we show on the left-hand side of the plan here. That can be done without pouring concrete. It would be a matter of just bringing the stones down into the backyard. They don't go on a deep footing. They go on a little bed of gravel, and that will be sufficient to support the wall that's leaning and failing. The existing wall is leaning quite badly, and these stairs are not in good shape, and so we will also be replacing the stairs. The entire activity will take place outside the no-build zone, so I think that's an important factor. The existing wall is not in the no-build zone, and the entire wall will take place outside the no-build zone. But in talking with Marilyn about it, there were a few other things she wanted to do, and she, I guess, had talked to Chuck, the administrator, about some of these things, and I told her that the best way to go about it is to apply for everything all at once. So the second thing she wants to accomplish is to be able to regrade a small portion of the backyard in order to gain access to the backyard with like a rider mower or something like that. This yard actually consists of kind of two levels. There's an upper level, which is patios and gardens and so forth, and then there's a lower level, which is grass area. It's indicated as a lawn area on the plan. So that grading would be done. The existing retaining wall would be cut back. The new retaining wall would take a right angle bend at that point, and we would accommodate grades that she would be able to have at least a push lawnmower, if not a rider lawnmower, go down into that back area. Right now, it's very hard to access to maintain. There currently exists in the backyard some. There's a paver walks and a patio area. The patio area is in the area of the proposed pool, and there's a paver walk that comes down from the driveway, goes actually under an existing concrete deck, and then onto the patio area. The patio has settled because the wall leans forward. As the wall leans forward, the land subsides and the patio settles. So that needs to all be replaced. And what was originally proposed was to put a 12 by 52 lap pool in that area and put a bluestone patio around the outside of it. The bluestone would all grade away from the pool, which is typically what you do. The pool itself would obviously be self-contained as far as runoff is concerned. The other areas would run off either towards the grassy area on the westerly side of the lot, or the lawn area, the mowed area that I described earlier below the retaining wall. So it would run over the retaining wall into that flat, very flat mowed area. We had proposed a new deck around the pool of bluestone. As this project kind of was continued to be designed, Marilyn indicated that she might not want to build the pool. If she doesn't, we would have to come back to the commission with how much area we need to have as a patio area in lieu of the pool. So that's a possibility that it might not be built. The last aspect of it was there are some trees that Marilyn is quite concerned about. Two of them exist in the 25 to 35 foot no build zone, and two of them, three of them exist in the ZNV. The reason for wanting to remove them is they have quite a broad reach, and she has to trim the branches back on them on occasion, and they're fairly high trees, and she's concerned that they have the potential at least to blow over and affect the house. And I believe my wetland scientist sent Chuck some pictures of the trees today.
You want me to get those going right now? I will.
Yeah, well, you indicated today that you thought that the commission might like to see them, and I frankly haven't seen what was finally presented. I had to go to a meeting, and I do these things from home now because there's no sense in being at the office and then having to come home from the office. So I left for home, so I didn't see exactly what she sent, but there are basically 5 of them. 2 of them are smaller pine trees. And then the others are large, or 3 large oak and maple trees. And Marilyn, maybe you could expound a little bit on why you want to remove the trees. The trees to be removed have blue flags on them. They may be kind of hard to see from the photographs, but the pine tree to the right and I guess that's a maple to the left. It's either a maple or an oak. I don't know. I can't see the leaves on it, but those are 2 of them, and then there are 3 others that she wants to remove. You can see the blue flag on them.
Okay, so the reason why they're a problem is because the sun on the house going from east to west, these trees really basically only want to grow toward the house. And at least every 2 years, I have to have tree trimmers come in and shave them down because they literally will reach over the deck. So that is of concern, and it just so encroaches upon the backyard because that's really where the growth of the trees wants to go. And then when I think about having people doing landscaping back there and getting equipment down there and even repairing this wall and doing all this, it's just such a very tight area. I like the woods. I like the trees. I don't want to cut anything else down, and I like how they are still on the sides where my neighbors are on both sides. So it's not that I want to clear it out at all. It's just the encroaching of these trees and truly how tall they are.
Yeah, and I believe, Chuck, you asked whether this was to increase the lawn, and it has nothing to do with that. These trees are kind of on the edge of the woods. She just wants to cut the trees but keep the mowed area exactly the same as it is today. I think that explains the project.
It does. There you go. This is what I was looking for.
That was the twin maple that's kind of in the center of the area where we want to remove the 5 trees. That one's in the middle. There are 2 on the left and 2 on the right, and that one's in the middle.
Same picture.
Yeah.
You can see how close to
the deck is. I think one of them you could see maybe one of the first ones. Where you could almost see it leaning over towards the deck. At least one of the ones I remember you sending us, Chuck.
this one here. Oh, I just had that picture up. Hold on a second. I'll return to that picture.
Yeah, that one.
You see that one?
So, Peter, I think right at the end you hit what my big question was, and I'm glad you guys were able to get these pictures over to us today, because that was part of my big question looking at this, because for the most part I didn't have as many questions in regards to the rest of the project, but the yard, and I think what you just said. So what I saw is, you'd like to regrade it on the what I'll call the right side there, so that you can get a mower down. I think there's some grassy area down below that wall, but you're not looking to necessarily extend the yard. You're looking to maintain where the grass is now, but just take down trees that are leaning or have branches that are encroaching over the wall, over the deck, potentially over the pool that would go in. We have a replacement policy. I think, as you may have probably just heard from the last project, is there a plan to replant the trees and where they would go, in this area?
I had not discussed that with my client. I think, we can look at planting some trees that the commission would like to see. I think that they are planted, maybe something that doesn't grow quite so tall. Marilyn, maybe let me ask you one question, and I hope this is not, they say never ask a question in the hearing that you don't know the answer to. What is the reason you want to cut the smaller pine trees?
I don't really care about them. I mean, they could stay. They're about 8 or 9 feet high.
Right, they're not
Yeah.
very tall, and Chuck asked the question too today in his email if they were healthy, and I think that they definitely look like they're healthy trees, and I kind of question why we wanted to do it. The others I can more see. Maybe what we could do is ask for permission to cut the 3 trees, one of which would be in the 25 to 35 foot zone, that the other 2 would be within the ZNV, and come up with a proposal to replant 3 trees in essentially the same place. But I could ask my botanist to pick out a species that would not grow to such an extreme height and would not push out as much.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I like the idea of the near that location or some sort of line, because I think what that will, again, this is me looking from a plan, but what I see is whether it's Marilyn or someday, years from now, somebody else is down there. If the trees are cleared, all of a sudden that leaves a nice opening that if I had the ability to get a mower down there, I'd say, well, maybe I start mowing some of this longer stuff. Maybe I start extending my grass, give myself a little bit more yard. I think making sure that replacement in that area occurs just kind of, confirms that we don't get any sort of like creep of the yard and allows that landscape to be maintained.
So I wanted to chime in here. So this area where these 3 trees are coming down, and this is a notice of intent, so we would ask for monuments to go in, noting the 25-foot Z and V. 3 of those trees are behind that line. One of the trees is right on the line. I would say that any replanting should happen, if it can happen, behind the 25-foot Z and V, but in conjunction with the monuments going in with this project. So I have a list from Elizabeth Wallace, and she said that it's a 15-inch oak tree, the cut stump in the vicinity of flag 2. It's 40 to 45 feet high. There's a 6-inch pine in the vicinity of flag 3 that's 6 inches high. It's a twin maple, 40-inch.
Feet high. I think it's 6 feet high.
6 feet high, right.
Yeah.
And twin maple, 40 plus, and 20 plus height, and then an 18-inch oak in the vicinity of flag 4 that's 40 foot high, and then an 8-inch pine that's 6 foot high. So it's the 2 pines. that are, 6 feet. They're pretty small, but they will spread out, and in a few years there's going to be a lot of light underneath them. All the lower branches usually die out. So if you want to go with, so we have 3 options. We usually have, but it sounds like you want to replant. That's great. And as long as they're native trees or shrubs, 2 shrubs for each tree, or a 10 to 15 foot tall native tree that's a 3-inch caliper. Those are our requirements.
Chuck, with the proximity of the pool, do we require an O&M plan?
It would be a good idea to get an O&M plan. We usually ask that with every pool, just so we understand and the owner understands not to directly discharge beyond the 25-foot ZNV. And some of these pools don't even need backwashing, so not sure.
Yeah, I think the type of filter that they have probably would have a disposable cartridge, and it most likely would have a salt chlorinator. We have a standard that says how many hours you should wait after you've added any chlorine to the pool and stuff. I can get some sort of a standard O&M for that.
Okay.
And Peter, is there any sort of there's an increase in impervious area, correct?
I thought that question might come up. The impervious areas, I think, just about net out because there's an existing patio under the pool. That might not be the case. I really hadn't discussed with Marilyn about not having the pool. It was kind of at the very end, she said that maybe it was an expense that she didn't want to go through. I can see what she would propose for a patio. I mean, the patio that exists there now needs to be replaced for sure. And I think she'd like to have it be somewhat bigger. What we might be able to do is put like a trench drain with a grate, put it all away from the house, and then there'd be stone behind the wall anyway. If you look at the wall cross section, we could put we could put the grate into the stone that's there, and there still would be a drain tile going out, but I think there'd be some infiltration, and it would at least delay runoff effects.
Okay.
But I'd want to talk with Marilyn about how much patio we need if we don't have a pool. Have you given that any thought?
Well, if there wasn't a pool, I wouldn't need that much of a patio, that's for sure. I wouldn't really need much more than what I already have.
Well, we might change the geometry, but we might want to replace it in kind. I think that's what you're saying.
No, I wouldn't replace it in kind. I'd definitely do something other than the kind of pavers I've had. And the bluestone, if we did a bluestone patio, it would match the front walkway that I have.
Right. Well, let me rephrase that. Replace it in size, not type of material, but
yes, yeah,
same area.
Right.
Okay.
My main concern is replacing and fixing the wall so that I don't have this erosion of the dirt that comes up next to my foundation.
No, I think that's great. I don't have any other questions, Chuck. Open it up to the rest of the commission.
Yep. Let's see if the rest of the commission.
Anybody?
I'm gonna let you do it, Mike. I think we're turning people on and off. Did you get Alex?
Sorry. Say that again?
I was just saying, I think we're turning people on and off, but I'll let you go through them. It's Scott and John.
Scott. John, everybody was at the top of the wall. All right.
I don't know, Nicola may want to say something about this.
And Dave.
All right. Does anyone have any questions about this project?
I'm hearing none.
Again, most of the work is behind an existing retaining wall that had a patio and an area that was used as the regrading an area so they can get down behind the retaining wall, access that back lawn, and they're taking down 3 trees now? They're leaving the 2 pines? Is that what it is, Peter?
Is that acceptable, Marilyn?
That's fine.
Okay, and I will get Elizabeth to contact Chuck to see what type of species in the specifications, the 3-inch DBH.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So, Chuck, similar to this last one, I mean, I think this is a notice of intent. I think there are some open items that we're looking for, but my suggestion would be, I mean, I think we're pretty close to there. I think there's things that we're getting, but I mean, I would prepare an order for next meeting.
So there's
I would leave this open until then.
Mike, there's an abutter that would like to say something, Joanne?
So, comments from the public.
I'm going to unmute her, and I'm going to lower her hand, so...
All right, I'm not even seeing that. Okay, go ahead.
So, Joanne, you have some... Hi.
Yes, Joanne Senders. Yep.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Joanne Senders, 98 Colonial Drive. We think Marilyn's project's fabulous. We appreciate her comments about the encroaching trees. We have the similar issue. But anyway, the question we have is on the retaining wall, because it seems that retaining wall is continuous. So we're not sure how that impacts the part that's in our property.
Yeah, I just wanted to know structurally how you would tie the new wall in with, because it's really one continuous wall extending over to 98 Colonial. So where that break is on the property line, will the new wall tie into the existing wall so that the existing wall that we have doesn't degrade anymore because it doesn't have any end support?
It's just going to butt up against the existing wall. The existing wall is going to stay there. So we will just be doing a new wall that butt up against it. And I don't know if do you have any leaning in your wall?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So that's why I'm wondering where it will no longer be physically connected to the wall to 106.
It'll be physically connected still.
It will be physically connected.
Yeah, this wall will just be in front of it and will be buttressed up against it.
Okay, that was my question. If you were going to structurally kind of tie into it to give it some support.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to try and do anything with that wall other than this is going to be a gravity wall. It's going to be in front of that wall so that it'll just hold that wall up. It'll be another.
Kill that. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. You're saying you're not removing the wall.
No.
You're putting a wall on the woods side of it, just in front of it.
That's correct.
Okay. So you're not pulling. Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you were pulling down that section of wall and replacing it with this other one. You're not. No, that's great.
No, that's a much bigger construction project, and I think would be less palatable to the commission. And I think you'll find that the wall that we've picked is architecturally it looks good, and it'll be a minimum amount of disruption.
Yeah, because I was wondering how something like that wouldn't overturn when you said it doesn't have a deep footing. Because I was picturing it replacing that wall, and I was thinking, gee, how is that going to not just fall over? But you're saying no, the existing wall remains. This one just sits in front of it. I get it. So
yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Looks like a great project.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you, guys. Any other
I don't think they can
comments
see
from
the plans, but
There's
I just said I don't think they can see the plans, but there's a great detail of how that wall goes in, and it shows the existing. So we're at a point where we've discussed this, but it's the policy of the commission and I think other departments not to close on the first meeting because of the Zoom meeting format, which is unfamiliar with some abutters. So we leave it open for 2 meetings, but I will prepare the order of conditions to be voted on and issued at the next meeting. And of course, before we do that, we'll find out if anyone has any more comments or anyone that's an abutter has any comments.
Yeah, and correct. Thanks, Chuck. And just I know we've said it, but it's worth saying multiple times. If there's any comments that you feel from the public that you feel were not able to get addressed, there's an opportunity to provide that prior to the next meeting or at the next meeting. So, with that, do I hear a motion?
Motion. Oh, sorry.
To continue to June 24th.
Second.
Michael Flynn in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Carl Sacconi in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Dave, do you want to vote? I think you came in the middle of this.
I'm going to abstain from voting on this, okay?
Great, thank you.
All right, Peter, thank you. I'll have that prepared for the next meeting, and it should be, as long as there's no other comments from abutters, we should be fine. Move forward on it.
Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.
Thank
You too. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Marilyn.
All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. It's 259, 267 Main Street. This has actually been, the applicants asked us to continue until our June 24th meeting. Can I just get a motion to continue?
Martha Moore moves to continue 259, 267 Main Street to the June 24th meeting.
A second? Can I get a second from the commission?
Second.
Yep.
Can you say your name?
David Panett, second.
All in
Michael
favor?
Flynn in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Carl Sacconi in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
David Panett in favor.
Great.
Great.
All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. Track Road near 74 Track Road. This is a continuation of a public hearing for notice of intent filed by Ryan Percival, Town of Reading Engineering Department. This is for replacement of demolition and replacement of an existing bridge on Track Road. There's minor and temporary impacts that are proposed for land underwater, waterways, 100-year floodplain, 200-year riverfront area, and the 100-foot buffer zone. There's also compensatory flood storage that's being provided down the waterway as part of this project. Just to give a quick summary, last time, I don't believe, I think we were able to get all items resolved, but we, just like in the last couple notice of intents, we wanted to continue just to allow further public comment if there were any, and time to prepare the order of conditions. But there was nothing else that we were looking for from the applicant. We just wanted to make sure that we kept it moving. Chuck, before I turn it over to Ryan and the consultants, if they have anything else, did we receive any public comment in between since last meeting?
All the public comment came before our last meeting in June. No, in May. And there was a lot of comments, and we had a lot of people online with us, and I think that was handled. My recollection of this project is we had discussed the plan. They had went back to their office and revised the plan, and then discussed each bullet item with the commission. And the reason why we held it open is for that same reason. The plans had just come in, and with the Zoom video and meeting forum, we wanted to leave enough time to see if there would be additional comments that come in. And I did not receive any.
All right. Does any, go ahead, Chuck.
I don't recognize every name that's out there, so we need to find out if everyone knows how to raise their hand if they have a question, and ask if they have to, or we could unmute everyone. It's up to you, Chair.
Ryan, I mean, it looks like you're unmuted. Do you have anything that that is just as the applicant, do you have anything else? I mean, I know you're AECOM's here as well. Is there anything else on your end?
On my end right now, no, we're just waiting for the order of conditions. I think it was just continued, just basically to go through another formality. I do ask that if we do expect AECOM to chime in, that we unmute both Rick Devana and Matt Devlin, if you can do that. I can tell you that I've gotten a few phone calls, a few neighbors in the area. They're excited for the project, so we've reached out to all the abutting neighbors too. So.
All right. So I don't see any other. I'm not seeing any other issues for comment. Chuck, were we able to get an order of conditions prepared?
We have an order of conditions, and I want you to go over any conditions that you have tonight. I'll add that to it, and I'll be able to get it to Ryan early next week.
Did you send us what you had put together? Sorry,
I did not. This
okay.
So this order of conditions is most of our boilerplate, and with the addition of any conditions that you are going to ask for tonight.
So one of the conditions I know we talked about was one of the ones that I was concerned about, and I think this was brought up with DEP as well, was well, they had a comment mostly about capacity of the bypass, and I think I had to comment as well, but the discussion that was provided, and I think you guys provided response in your memo, but just Chuck, it probably worth some sort of condition in there, is that prior to strictly using the bypass, that there is a review of the forecast. I think what we were told was this is just a 2 or 3 day process to actually make the replacement, that it's actually going to be on-site waiting to make the replacement, and so that the need for the bypass was a relatively short period. But it wasn't exactly clear what the capacity was, other than some minimal storms. So I want to make sure that, go ahead.
So you're asking for the project to be done in low flow conditions and a forecast of at least how many days of no rain? 4, 3?
I think 3 or 4, something in that range, based on the schedule we provided.
Yeah, I think that's what we talked about in the meeting anyways. Any other conditions from anyone on the commission? Typical boilerplate, I would like to be informed when milestones are met, and if there was, and I'll work with Ryan on that part of the project, but we're going to have a pre-activity meeting. I'll invite the commission before this is kicked off, and that's typically what we do. I know that Anika was concerned with the bank and how much riprap was going in. I didn't get any comments from her, so I think she was satisfied with that last rendition of the plans. Yeah.
Okay. Any other items? I'm hearing none. With that, then, do I hear a motion to close the meeting?
Martha Moore moves to close the meeting on the Track Road Bridge.
Second.
Carl Ciccone, second.
Carl Ciccone.
Well, all right.
All right, Michael Flynn in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
David Panett in favor.
All right, great. And then can I get a motion to issue with the amendments that we've just indicated to Chuck? Go ahead, Martha, for someone.
Do I need to know the DEP number for that?
DEP file number is 270-0729.
I move to issue an order of conditions for that file.
Second. Carl Ciccone, second.
Michael Flynn in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
David Panett in favor.
All right, great. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And,
yeah, thanks all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Chuck will be in touch along the way, all right?
Appreciate that, Ryan.
No problem.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks. Richard already left. All right. Moving along. Next item on the agenda is the request to remove 11 trees at Bear Meadow. This is south of the viewing platform. This came from a resident neighboring Bear Meadow, Poirier. So we talked about this at our last meeting. This is a set of trees that came up back in September of last year that Chuck and the tree warden went out to look at, and then recently a tree fell over on the Bear Meadow property. The Bear Meadow property is conservation land, so it's not within the 100-foot buffer, but it is in the care of the Conservation Commission, which is why it's before us. Essentially, what we've been asked is that there are 11 trees out there that the neighbor, our neighbor, would essentially like to have removed. What we asked at the last meeting is the commission go out to the site if they could and review the trees and come up with, an opinion or thoughts on what was out there, and is there something that could be done, or what their thoughts were. So I know Martha and John, you guys, we were going to go out together. We ended up doing it at different times. I guess I'll start with my assessment of, I was able to do a site walk the other day. This was now, I think it was the weekend after the meeting. And I saw the trees that were flagged. There were 2 or 3 that were pretty close to the abutter's home that I felt like were either leaning towards or just in a really close spot. The remaining, I think, felt like they were a distance away that, from my perspective, were less concerning, but I know there's some aspect of those pines that have shallow root systems, and I think that was actually what fell. What fell appeared to me to be a pine tree near, I guess, a real rocky area, which meant probably the roots were more shallow system. So we did receive from the neighboring abutter a tree evaluation from Mayor Tree, but before I do that, I guess I'll open it up to the commission of, did anybody else have any thoughts that were you able to visit the site, and what was the takeaway? Go ahead, Martha.
It seemed to me like it's reasonable to take those trees down, that they do look like they could pose a threat to the homeowner. I would like to see some of them left as tall stumps that could be wildlife habitat, maybe some of the ones further into the woods, and not just take them straight down to the ground. That was the only thought I had.
Martha, when you say take, you mean everyone that's out there?
I don't mean that we would leave all of them as tall stumps, but like if there's 8 or 11 trees that we're thinking about, maybe leave 3 or 4 that are like woodpecker trees, that kind of thing. The ones I'm thinking further away from the house, and then there's a lot of young pines that I'm sure will start growing up quite quickly once the shade is gone from the tall ones. So they'd be blocking the view of these standing deadwood in the background, but the standing deadwood would provide wildlife habitat. So that's just my thought. Anybody else?
Yeah, so I had visited the site with Chuck, and who else was there? And I think one of the most obvious things was the shallow root and the rocky ledge in the soil there. I think we did take notes of what the lean of the trees. And in fact, with a couple of trees that had fallen already, some of the existing trees were leaning in the homeowner's direction, and appeared to be large enough that, or tall enough that they could damage the property. I think one other note that we felt was that the pines maybe do best in a group, and with the ones that had fallen, might leave some more exposed than others. So I think the feeling was that with the roots and what had already fallen, they could pose a problem. There was a couple of, this is a good picture, right? It's a couple of the, check, were they oak or the maple that I thought were in.
Number 1 is an oak, and number 2 is a maple.
So I did.
5's an oak.
I did think the deciduous trees seem to be doing well. I think one had some dead on it, but certainly half or a third of the height of the pines too. So I kind of felt that if there was a way to see those stay, but the pines seem to be more egregious.
Yeah, so I have from my notes here that, 1 and 2, I think they were the deciduous, but those were the ones closest to the house, closest to the property. I think it's 2, you can even see in this picture, that is, appears like it's leaning. 3, I think from what I've heard, that was a pine that was split at the top, and, may be in poor condition. I don't know. This is not my expertise, but I think just like everybody said, if you take down 1, 2, and 3, is 4 now in a zone where, because that's a pine, that it's at risk. But the rest, I was under the impression that they were further away. They're in areas that are protected, that other trees kind of protected if they do fall, that those are in less hazard areas, that, I think we've said this here, we've said on a couple of these other meetings, I'd like to see as few of these taken down as I can. I know this is not a wetland area, but conservation is conservation. I'd like us to take as few down as we can, understanding like we want to be good neighbors. So, I guess I'm under the impression that I really don't have an issue with 1, 2, and 3. I'm not the right person to decide if 4 should come down as well because of that, but I wouldn't have an issue if that was the right decision. But the rest that I would support, we leave in essence. And can you continue to inspect if the condition seems like it's changing, that then maybe something else has to change. But those don't seem to be, to me, in any sort of urgency, and they seem to be at a distance that I don't take issue with. So Martha, Carl, had anybody else have any thoughts?
I actually have some notes that I had when I went out that day. Tree number 10, as it was marked, appeared that it hadn't bud out yet, but it was my position. If it's dead, if it hasn't bud out yet, take it out. Number 4 is a very mature tree, as mature as the other tree that fell down. I would say that is in line for being harvested. Number 3 is a fork tree. Any tree, especially pine trees that have forks in the trunk, tend to be very weak where they're forked. It's also leaning towards the house, and I would say that probably would be something that you might want to take out. Trees number 1 and 2, those are the hardwood trees, look okay to me to remain, even though they are leaning somewhat towards the other property. Perhaps just trim some of the larger leaders that are heading towards the house. Number 5 appears to be okay to me. Perhaps again trim some limbs on that. Number 9 is dead. Drop it. As far as trees 6, 7, and 8, they're all mature, and I would also suggest that there's a possibility of dropping those, because they were in and around the other trees that have also fallen down. And I think if they are that mature and the size that they are, if you actually were to harvest those, it would allow for successful growth of other species of trees and other trees to take their place. I also noted when I was out there were 2 trees that were not ribboned. They were not adjacent to the property that was mentioned, but they're behind trees number 7 and 8. That are kind of scraggly looking trees, and if you're in there and you're going to be doing work in there at the time, so you don't keep on going in and out of the same place with heavy equipment to do logging, cutting, that those trees also would be looked at as well. They're going towards the corner of the other property, but they're 2 trees that also were, I think, crotch trees, and trees that had calved off a number of limbs already in the past.
All right, Dave. Thank you. That was a good note. Any other? All right, Mr. Poirier, I know you're on. I'd let you go.
So, Mike, I wanted to go on the record.
Yeah.
So on the record too. Let me just pull up these trees again. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at the trees. So, my recollection of what we're looking at here is there's been talk about the ground and the rocks But I feel like 6, 8, and 7 are further away from that mounded area. They're further away from the house. But at the very top of each one of those trees, there's leaders that have 3 or 4 shoots in it. I think 7 is the best. But as far as the possibility of them falling down and actually hitting the house, I think this picture shows, if the picture's up, there's not a large likelihood that would happen. But they all are mature trees, and their canopy is far above the other deciduous trees that are around that area. I'm going to try to find the other trees right now, which are, yeah, here we go. And so number 5, number 1, and number 2, these are hardwood trees, probably not going to fall over. 1 and 2 are very close to the property. 2 is leaning because it's stretching out for the sun. 1, it looks like there's a leader on it that could be cut off. And again, when 3 and 4, if they're removed with these other recommendations, 1 and 2 and 5 are going to grow a lot better. You know, pine trees are different than hardwoods, and those, I would say 5, 1, and 2 would be on my keep monitoring list. 3 has a split at the top of it. It's a double trunk. It's just above the picture. And 4 is quite tall, and they're close to the house. So that's my rundown of what I see out there. I think that there's trees on the other side that were mentioned. I think Anika was talking about, and Mike, and we're talking about number 10, which is a hardwood tree, and number 11, which is a pine. But tree number 11 is so far away from anything. And I don't even see why we're really talking about it with this in this conversation. So that's all I have to add, and I'll try to get those pictures up as others talk.
Okay. Mr. Poirier, and maybe it's for you. Do you have anything to add?
I do. I thank you very much. First, it's Ralph. You can take care of Mr. Poirier. I'm not 100 years old yet. I feel it, but I'm not. First, I want to thank the board and all the members for taking the time to coming out to the property and look at this, especially with this C19 stuff that's going on. Just a real brief history on the side where you said tree number 11. Last October, there were 3 huge trees that came down just to the left-hand side. I could see the stump, and one right behind that came down onto the property. Did not hit the shed, the garage that was over to the left-hand side of that stump. Both the conservation people and Mark Hannaford's group, they came out, surveyed the situation, and took care of the problem expeditiously. It was a great job, and I thank you for that. At that particular time, I also brought both of the gentlemen out to the back of the house, which is the northern side of. We're just looking at all those other trees and showing them the concerns I had with those. Every one of those pine trees are over 80 feet to 100 feet tall. Every one of them have the capabilities, even the ones in the back, of hitting the home on it, with not just branches on the top of this thing, with the base, with bulk of the tree. Even on the, if you push, I don't know, Mike, if you can, Chow, if you can put the other picture where it shows the 7, 8, 9 area trees on the other picture of that.
All right.
Basically, one of those trees that are tagged is already snapped off and fell in and broke down. There's also 2 other large trees just to the left of that that came down in that particular property. Didn't affect my property. Could have affected someone else's, but it didn't affect my personal property home. The only feature that I have, and the only reason I'm taking your time in pursuing this, is we are petrified. It's not if these are going to come down, it's going to be when they come down. And the wind predominantly comes from the north or the east or the northwest on this. It all blows this particular way. I was extremely fortunate that that tree that uprooted came from a gust that came out of the south, which is really unprecedented. We never get something out of that particular way. If that ever came down and hit the house, the home was gone, and if anyone was in it, it would have been catastrophic. Number 6, number 9, number 7, you don't have a perception of this, but every one of those will hit the house. Every one of the trees are on the same knoll. They have all the same sand. That's all ledge and rock up in that whole location. Very, very shallow loam or soil content that's in there on it. So that's the purpose, where I'm coming from on it. I had a outside engineer from my out, a certified arborist, and took a look at this, and he sent you folks, said Charles, a letter on it, concurring that there's an imminent danger of this particular stuff coming down. These things are monsters. They're huge. They have multiple leaders on them. And I'm just trying to proactively, I don't want to lose my home, nor do I want to lose my family. And just trying to be, I'm not asking for anything more than that particular stuff. I happen to also love trees, and I love the conservation area. I'm also an active member of the trustees of the reservation. So I appreciate trees, land, and things like this. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of other seedling trees underneath that area that will more than surpass the numbers of the things that you guys are going to, what I'm proposing, to take down out there. David, I appreciate your candor, and I think you hit it pretty much on the head. The 2 maple trees are in the front. They have multiple leaders on these things, but if the board's decision is to leave those and do some serious leader removals, hopefully stop some splitting on that, I'll work with you folks on that particular things. But the other trees that I have in here are scary, and I just need some help and assistance to taking a hazardous situation off the books here. That's all. That's all I really. It's Ralph, please. Thank you.
So so one thing I will say, we got the letter that Mayor prepared from Mr. Poirier, and I think we've seen just in general with what the commission has said, and everybody has reviewed that there are trees there that appear that they should come down. I think that which ones and the quantity has not necessarily been is not necessarily clear to me yet. And I want to make sure we're working to minimize what we can do as we can. The one thing I would say with the mayor tree, just in general, is I think they gave a letter, just kind of a sweeping removal of, take all of these down. That's certainly not something, if that were what they recommended, I would want like a tree by tree, like, this is why this one would come down, this is why this one should come down. And just from our standpoint, maybe reasons for us to engage an arborist to review and say, yes, you guys are on the right track with the list that needs to come down, or yes, those 2 can stay, but leaders need to come. These leaders should come down, and this is how we could do it. My take is that's the way to move forward. I think it's clear to me that there's work to be done here. Which ones? I think we didn't necessarily even hear a consensus from the commission yet. So
my only other statement that I have, every one of you people came out and saw it. If you lived in my home, if that was your home right there, how would you feel? And I need you to be honest on that particular thing. Again, if I know these things were falling, and this these trees were 150 feet away from the house, I wouldn't be wasting your time on this. But every one of these things are a potential hazard. And I'm just going to go in and do it. I think it should be done properly on it and do it once and once only, and you're not going in again with equipment to bother the rest of the conservation land on it. So I need your common sense input and direction in this particular thing, folks.
Mike, do you, before we go any further, I know that Jane Kinsella is still here.
Yeah.
At DPW, maybe there would be, have some input from the DPW department if it's available.
Yeah, so Jane, if you're there, we'll unmute you. I mean, in general, the way that this has worked for us in the past, that we've gone to the DPW and requested that they assist in these steps. Now, whether it's the commission or the DPW, any public entity, I mean, there's work here, and between both parties, whether we're handling this or we are requesting that help, I think what can happen and what they could offer is certainly, the input is valuable. So, Jane, you there?
Yes, I am, Mike. So I can ask Mike Hannaford to review that list that Mayor Tree submitted. I know he's been up there, you know, so, and he's aware of some of the issues, but if you want, I can have him go through that list and give his opinion on their submittal.
I think that'd be really helpful, Jane. I think, Mike's doing this all over town. He's the pro that the town employs. So I think if he could go through that list of those 11 trees and knowing what the commission's viewpoint is at this point, and just even from the standpoint of what can be done, what's reasonable, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay, yeah, I'll have him do that.
And so, and with that list.
And Chuck, that 11 was not requested by me out in that location. That's the one that came down last fall, and that got tagged not under my particular direction. So that's not in the equation, but I'm immediately looking forward to eliminate a hazard situation out here. I mean, as these things are coming down, we get any serious thunderstorms and some serious winds, something's going to happen. And I'm just trying, desperately to save the property, save the home, and save lives. All I'm trying to do, folks.
Right.
Yeah, I heard you say that. I think I've been out there with many groups at this point, and I understand the situation well. And it would be great if through Jane we could get Mike Hannaford out there to, kind of take us to a little higher level on the evaluation, and make some. And I don't know, Jane, is he could we get some recommendations from Mike on that list from Mayor Tree? And I think there's 2 or 3 that are not from Mayor Tree, but they're numbered on some pictures that I have.
Okay, yeah, I'll have him review it. And if there's any question, he can reach out to you.
Sounds great. Maybe after our cemetery site visit.
Okay.
I know I'm supposed to raise my hand, and I apologize for that.
That's fine, Mr.
Hopefully, something start to roll in this particular thing. We got thunderstorm, hurricane season. It's approaching type of thing, and I'm trying to be proactive. It's almost July right now, so I'm asking for everyone's help. And everyone's been cooperative. I'm just, as a nervous landowner, homeowner, and if you're in my position, I think you'd understand it. So I openly entertain, anyone can come up at this place at any time. You can use the driveway, please, drive up instead of hiking through the Madeira. If you give me a call, I'll make sure I'm around. And I'd love to work with all you people just to come to a good resolution on this. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. And I appreciate, obviously that a lot of this all started happening, the everything falling, and then the commission meeting is all happening during this COVID stuff, and obviously our meetings have been fewer and far between than typical. So I appreciate your patience and us being able to get out there during this time, and the challenges that's presented as well. So
thank you.
I think that's a good plan, Chuck and Jane. If Tuesday right after that, the walk for Charles works for me. I mean that puts this on a really short leash of like let's get a timeline and get it together. If we want to go straight from Charles to up here,
it works for me. I'll just make sure it works for Mike tomorrow.
Yeah, and if we need to do something else, just let us know. But it seems to make sense.
So that's next Tuesday, sometime in the afternoon, and so noon on.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Should be around 12, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little earlier, but around 12.
That's cocktail time here.
That's good.
I hope you have plenty ready.
Freeze down. You'll never be thirsty in your life again.
All right.
All right.
Tuesday.
I look forward to everyone coming out and checking this out. And Jane, thank you for pushing this on a hot burner for me. And Charles, thanks for putting this all together. And Mr. Chairman and all the other folks are in there. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. So I don't think we need, Chuck, I don't think this is an item that we necessarily need to make a vote on. So I think we can just move on to the next item on the agenda.
So the next item on the agenda is...
Will this be carried over automatically to another meeting, or this may be resolved before your next scheduled meeting, depending on with the DPW and the interface with the conservation?
So let me answer that, Mike, before you answer it. The commission has to make all decisions in a public meeting. Before this meeting closes, they could they could give the permission to the chair. They could give it to myself to make the final decisions for them with Mike's recommendations, Mike Hannaford's recommendations and the DPW recommendations, or they could just say, look, we want to be more involved and we want to see that list and then make our recommendations after that. So those are their options. So I'm not sure now, Mike, Flynn.
No, so that's a great point, Ralph and Chuck. And Chuck, I think what you just brought up is a great, at least from my perspective, a great idea. I mean, I've heard a little bit of varying from the commission that has had comment, but in general, it sounds like everybody agrees something should be done. What I think is worth voting on is giving that, if everybody's okay with it, having either myself or Chuck make that decision with recommendation from Mike Hannaford of what's the right actions to be taken. And what I would consider is that we would make that decision, but we could make that decision before the next meeting. But either way, this would be carried on the old new business just as an update of this. This is what was decided, and this is the route we've decided to go. But that way, at least a decision can be made, in the short term, understanding that this has gone on now for more than 2 months, and we've extended it out. Does anybody have a opposition to that?
Would this be so nothing could happen before the next particular meeting if I'm reading into what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, or?
No, it actually the exact opposite. What I would hope that we can do as a commission is make a vote that either myself or Chuck can make the final decision, understanding what the concerns this commission has stated today, and understanding that we're going to have our tree warden provide some recommendation that obviously that is we value. So the hope would be that Chuck or myself can make that decision before the next meeting, and we can just be an update to the commission.
So if the final survey from Mr. Hannaford, if he comes along and says whatever he says, is the board willing to go along with that particular decision? Or if he doesn't come up with what I honestly think should be all of it, it goes back to you, or I'm just trying to get an idea.
Yes. So you know, if Mr. Hannaford goes out there and he says, yeah, I agree with this one and this one, if there's still trees that come out of that you feel like you want to push, or that should come, and this is maybe the benefit of leaving on the next meeting, is like those items. I think you could still, you know, I want you to be able to have the forum to say, well, I disagreed with what Chuck and Mike you know, ended up coming up with. I think there needs to be more done, but at least allow some sort of action to move forward. At least allow some sort of decisions to be made prior to that meeting.
When is the next meeting, can I ask, Mr. Chairman?
June 24th.
June 24th.
Okay, so that's in 2 weeks from now then, right? All right. Okay, thank you very much. I anxiously look forward to it, and I'm not, you know, I'm pushing, and it's the safety issue is why I'm pushing on this thing. So thank you very much for putting and your stuff, and I look forward to seeing you folks on Tuesday. Thank you. Jane, will you be at that meeting?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Good night, folks.
So
I'll say.
have a good night.
Thank you.
So I think that's worth a vote if anybody has any issue, or if that's something that works with everybody, or anybody has any issues with that. Do you have any? Does somebody want to make a motion for?
Yeah. No discussion. Then
discussion.
Then a motion.
Discussion and then a motion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Martha. Hold on. Go ahead, Martha.
I don't have any more things to discuss. Do you want me to make a motion?
Well, we just want to know if with everyone picking different trees, that if Mike or myself has the final decision, if that's okay with everyone. I think Mike brought it out pretty clearly that this has been going on for about 2 months. That's the only thing we're talking about, because you're giving away your final decision on the trees that it'll probably be taken down between meetings, if that's the direction that the town tree warden wants to go in.
Yeah.
But
you're giving up your right to say, Mike, I can't believe you picked that tree to come down. I didn't agree with that.
Okay. I looked at the trees and saw all the ones that had the orange tape, and I looked at all of the young pines that are already 10 feet tall in among the trunks, and I was happy if you took them all down. And maybe that's not politically correct to say, but given the proximity to his house, I felt like the young trees will fill in that forest very quickly once the canopy is opened up. So I'm fine with whatever Chuck, Mike, and Mike Hannaford decide.
I am too. Okay, second that.
Can I offer another suggestion?
Go ahead, Dave.
The homeowner actually engaged the services of a certified arborist through Mayor. Can I also suggest that when there's a site visit that is out there with the Public Works Director and Mike Hannaford, that the homeowner certified arborist also be included in that discussion period? You know,
yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
We're all sitting around the table talking about these trees. No one wants to cut trees down, but none of us sitting around this table is a certified arborist.
I think that's
I'm not even sure whether our town tree warden is a certified arborist.
I don't know the answer to that. Go ahead, Ralph.
I will definitely give Meyer a call and see if that can happen. And again, I think you've all seen the situation. You've seen the trees, the conditions, how close they are. and some have fallen off in the history of some of these things. So, I'm not trying to defoliate anything out here whatsoever. I'm an advocate for keeping everything status quo until it becomes an issue where it's safety and hazardous. So I'll be more than glad to contact Meyer. If, the issue with them is I got to sort of narrow them down to a time frame. So if I tell between 12 and 1 o'clock, is that enough to give you guys enough time, or folks and ladies enough time to do what you have to do on that Tuesday?
I think so. I think it pushes us to be decisive at Charles Street. So I think that's fine if you say noon. That gives us an hour at the Charles Street Cemetery.
And if I can't get him there, I'll try to get a representative from that firm. It's another arborist, if they have one in there.
Justin.
Yeah, the reason I picked that arborist is because I know he's done work for the town of Reading. And if you had another person that you were comfortable with, I would more than glad to get that particular person here.
I just wanted to comment that the trees that Chuck's been showing us pictures of are 1 through 11, and the arborist letter only lists 8 trees that are maple and pine. So I don't know what the other 3 trees are.
The other trees on this, Martha, are when they came out, a couple of the members tagged. I think one of them is a bean tree. If I'm the wrong terminology, that's what is a big old bean tree. The other one's that big pine tree down in the corner, which fell down back in October timeframe. I didn't ask for those particular things. What the arborist looked at was just the one in the back of the house on the north side, abutting that conservation area where the Madeira, cabin is on that particular side. Those are the ones that are critical on this. The other ones, I don't give a snowball chance, and heck, whatever happens to those things.
So I think we've got to pass forward on this. I think at this point, I think we can make a motion, and we've got a plan for a meeting. And, like I said, I think we can keep this on the agenda so that we can at least provide an update. But I think we've got professionals that are going to be looking at this, and, we're going to take the professionals' recommendations in mind when we're making any sort of decision. So,
thank you.
I think with that said, is there a motion that we'd like to make?
Martha Moore moves that we give the decision-making power to Chuck Taroni and Michael Flynn in consultation with Mike Hannaford and possibly Meyer Tree on exactly which trees to take down near 1447 Main Street.
So we're going to modify that. Mayor Tree does not have a decision. We'll take advice from them, but it's conservation land. We'll take advice from the town tree warden. That's just how it has to be. So the motion should be Flynn and Taroni in consultation with the town tree warden will make the decisions on the trees out there at 1447 Main Street. And you can just so move.
So moved.
So
Second.
didn't bother getting Meyer involved.
Ralph, I think the point is it doesn't hurt to have them out there and have, to show them what they see, but we're not going to, we're going to make decisions that are based on what we get.
I totally understand. Thank you. Okay, I'm all done. For a second.
All right. Thank you.
Looking for a second.
And thank you.
Second.
Michael Flynn, approve.
Martha Moore, approve.
Carl Ciccone, approve.
John Sullivan, approve.
Dave?
David Panett, approve.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jane, for hanging in there as well. We appreciate you staying. You can stay, continue to stay if you'd like.
Sure, yeah. It's a lot of fun. So we're on to old and new.
Old new business. So let's start with 15B street violation. The the filling of the wetland area. So I don't know if you guys saw, Chuck sent out an email. I've lost all track of time. So 2 weeks ago, Chuck, a week and a half ago, there was, as he was doing a site visit for a neighbor on B Street, somebody across the street came out and he could see that there was some work, and the guy had indicated, "Oh, I'm just putting a couple inches of fill onto this area. People have been dumping stuff in the wetlands. This will help kind of give me some grass and prevent people from dumping back there." And we got a call, it was last Friday from Mike Hannaford, who went out to follow up on Chuck's walk, and there was significant work being performed. And it was not in line with 2 inches of soil in a small zone. It was essentially filling of wetlands. A significant amount of work that had been performed. I don't know if members were able to go out and see. But so part of this is that the work was not performed on the 15B property. It was actually performed on, was the Zero Haverhill Street property, Chuck?
Yeah, so our Zero Haverhill Street property reaches across the wetland and onto the Libby Ave area, and this is B Street. So at the end of B Street, this was actually one of the proposed entrances to the conservation restriction that had to be reviewed. So everything's connected. So this filling has created an issue with the closing of Zero Haverhill Street. So the attorney for the owner, the attorney for the contractor, and the homeowner are trying to understand how to put this thing back together. Most of their suggestions, and I would like to get some feedback on, most of their suggestions, they want to subdivide the land into 3 sections. Mark Hall getting the buildable spot, the town getting the CR restriction, and they're going to cut off that section that was filled on and violated on and give that to the homeowner. And then they want the town to go after this homeowner now that he owns the land. And I have to tell you, before anyone answers that, I just said that's, I didn't want to do something like that. I think that we have the most leverage at this point, and they have the team in place that actually could take care of this quite quickly. But they all want to start getting lawyers and doing it that way. So me and Mike actually offered to listen to a verbal plan that would allow this to happen, because Maureen Harold is right on the other side of this property. And if Maureen Harold, with her expertise, could work with the homeowner through Mark and through the owner of the land and remove that material, that would be fine. And we were willing to have that happen. But no one jumped on that. And so they ended up continuing tonight's meeting, and they're still sending suggestions to me, but all those suggestions have to do with the town having to, go after a homeowner that most likely doesn't even understand the severity of what has happened and how hard the Conservation Commission could come down on him if he doesn't get this cleaned up. Oh, Mike, did I miss anything?
No, I think you said it right. And I think ultimately, so there's a couple things there that I just in general have concerns about with the Zero Haverhill is the piece of this conservation restriction is going to be turned over to us. So in a sense, what I don't want to inherit is a problem. I want to see the problem, it's on their property. In any other case, this would be up to the property owners to decide. I want to see them decide it because, frankly, the effort shouldn't be on our end. So no, I want something turned over to us that's in the proper condition. And you're right, they've got professionals hired right now that could do that. So.
So that's pretty much the update. I mean, to be continued, but if Zero Haverhill Street's going to be on the next agenda, then this most likely will be resolved. I don't know how it's going to happen, but if it was me, I would try to actually do the work instead of come up with a plan to do the work and put a bond on that plan. So that's the update. If there's not any questions, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the Matera property. And it says tree evaluation, but we went through that. But the parking lot and the parking lot for Lob's Pond, I think we need to move forward with something on this. I know that they're just sitting out there and people get busy, and I think the DPW department has gotten busy. Now, I could ask Ryan again to kind of reply to any of those emails I have and have sent him about these areas, but I think we decided to talk or to try to get our liaison involved, and I think Martha is going to write a letter, which she did. I don't know, Mike, you want to take it from there, or Martha, you want to?
Yeah, so Martha wrote the letter. I guess this sat out there. You know, I think we're working, and it was good to see engineering here. It was good to see Jane here. I think we're working on getting communication between our two groups better. I think what I would offer Chuck, or what I would like to see happen is, because I completely forgotten, we should have said, Jane, can you stay on for 5 more minutes so we can talk about this? I think we just go to Ryan or Jane directly one more time before we engage the liaison. I'd like to just make sure we don't, like, this is too far in the list. However, I mean, I think it's clear Lob's Pond, I mean, needs some work, but I don't know that Matera is just really bad. That parking lot is just in bad shape. I'm surprised that we haven't gotten like a C-click fix from it, or like that you know, we're really, frankly, the only ones that have noticed that. I mean, that's gotten pretty bad. I go out there frequently, but so I would like to push this. I do think, considering we have a meeting with them on next Tuesday, maybe that's a good time to. I know Ryan's not going to be there, but to ask Jane, I think we give a little more shot before we just push this to a liaison. I think it'll help our communication.
And it's just a reminder. Sure, Martha, you want to?
I was just going to suggest ask Jane to drive up to the Matera parking lot with you after you look at the trees, and you all pull in and just park in the parking lot, and she'll bottom out in the pothole, and then she'll understand what the issue is.
That's a very good suggestion, Martha, actually.
I think that Jane would be very, very helpful. You know, we're up there looking at the trees. It's right down the area, but I'm not looking for a one-time thing. I want to be on their maintenance schedule for every spring. Power rake their stones at Lob's Pond back into the parking lot, and when then we're down to that mud layer, and it needs to be graded, just to bring some more material in. I mean, what do we have to do to get it at that level where these things can be maintained? And then once we get that going, maybe we can maintain a couple of trails a little bit better than we have in the past. So these are the two things that we want, just like, hey, every Tuesday we're picking up the trash. Well, someone said, well, why don't we do a recycle too? Well, this time I'm saying, look, we've gone beyond this general stuff. I want to see every spring these places getting graded out, because a lot of people do use them. It is worth it. It does reflect on us, and it reflects on, the town not to have this in the way. And they may not know about it, but Ryan certainly does. So that was my thought, continual maintenance. So,
Okay.
And as far as that goes, we had brought this up to their attention. This is Mill Street, and we said, hey, we don't like the clay in front of that hydrant, and you're discharging from that hydrant right into the resource area. And Ryan said that the DPW would take care of it, and it happened during this, I don't know if it was Monday, it must be Wednesday or Monday or Tuesday. DPW went out there, and so that's what can happen. And it's great to see that you know, they listened and they understood that it wasn't exactly what we wanted, and when their contractor was finished, and they went and cleaned it up themselves.
Good. That's good to see.
So the next thing on the old and new business is a request to return the bonds for $2,500. Typically on bonds that have to do with plantings, we ask them to wait a year after the plantings have gone in to return the bond. And number 18 Lemnetta Lane, Lot 3 has it's just been about a year. And I had been out there, and I wrote about my little visit on the agenda. If anyone didn't see that, it was that the homeowner was building a swing area, and he didn't realize some of our rules and regulations. But after I went through them, he was going to correct all that stuff and get a minor project permit for his enclosed gravel and mulch swing set area, which I thought was appropriate. And I didn't think it was necessary to hold up the bond in any way. So unless there's any questions about this, and I do have a plan. Anyone wants to see it? So Colonial Lane is...
Chuck, is this the one that has the path?
Yes.
Oh.
The path is actually right here. So we were given an easement and a gift of the land in back of it for conservation. Well, actually, it was just a gift of this land in back of here. And it actually connects. If you walk up Lemnetta Lane, you're going across Franklin Street, and you're in, there's a path that'll get you into the Bear Meadow trail system, and you can get right to Bear Meadow. You can go to the Mature Cabin, you can go to Pearl Street. It's a good additional piece to a little spot we already had in Bear Meadow. So this is Lemnetta Lane and the new house. And these trees were planted as part of this project. There was little encroachment here. We didn't ask for a lot. An additional tree was taken down back in this back area, and one new tree was planted. I think it's right about here where my cursor is. When I was out there, the grass was in. The trees were doing well. There was a couple of dead trees that were still standing. These were the type of dead, that the bark had fallen off already, and I had let the homeowner know that I was giving him permission right there and then that they can come back. So my recommendation for 18 Lemnetta Lane is that the commission, affirms and agrees to give back the entire $2,500.
All right. Anybody have any questions or opposition? Not. Can I get a motion? Go ahead, Martha.
Where's the swing set you were talking about?
Sure. Let me get this. So the swing set is probably, I'm going to see if I can do this right. Right here. So it's a timber lined, filled with gravel, probably less than an inch with gravel. And then his intention was to throw mulch on top of that and put a swing in for his newborn child. And he's going to submit an application for a minor project permit.
I move that we return the bond to the owner of this home on Meadow Lane.
Second.
Mike Flynn in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Carl Sacconi in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
David Pinette in favor.
All right. And then the last on old new business, Chuck, is there an update on the determination of applicability, or is this just signatures that are required?
Yeah, it's on there because usually after we approve, we have signatures, but I am issuing that next week to the, I'll give that next week to the DPW department. We typically do a window survey of where all the erosion needs to be installed. This is really something that's been going on since 2011. It feels very natural to allow them to do this work. Everyone, you know, all the engineers are the same that I've always worked with, and the process is the same. And, you know, we don't try to put erosion control everywhere in town, but we do put it where it's needed. So there's no bills.
Do we need to go through like the signature run with this?
Yeah, if you want to ask people if they would. Oh, no, we don't have to. No. We have signatures.
Okay.
And the minutes only came in tonight, and I didn't figure I would send them off to you. So we'll have 2 sets of minutes for our next meeting.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
All right, great.
But I did have
Anything
a question
else?
for John. Or for Scott. Sorry, John. I keep doing that to you, man.
Scott. Scott, did they ask you to become a full member?
They did, but I told them that I'm not sure I'm ready to commit to that at this point. You know, I told them that if someone else were to resign, that I would consider doing it. I honestly feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I committed. I will say, I mean, has anyone else applied? Does the seat need to be filled?
So
yes, we have one.
So just so everybody's aware, we're gonna Bob Hayes has decided not to renew, so we're gonna have one open seat on the full member positions. So they re-interviewed you and obviously John. John's already a full member, and that was one of the things that we had told them to ask. There was somebody else on that list that was, I think their first choice was CPDC and their second choice was Conservation Commission. So I don't know what they were going to do with that. Generally, they try to give people their first choice, but I don't know what the seats stand as. So I don't know what happened with that. They don't tell us. They offer us to watch, but they don't tell us like what they're going to do other than like here's the people that are being interviewed.
I will say that if I would fill it if the seat is just going to if it's going to remain vacant. You know, as you all, or at least people who go to the site visits and things like that know, I mean, I'm not showing up to go to the site visits. I actually try to get out on the weekends on my bike, and I try to drive by some of these the sites, but I feel as though right at this point, I mean, I'm not able to commit to going on the site visits, and if there's someone else that's able to do that, I feel like they'd probably be a better fit for the position or for the vacancy. But I will say, if I would rather fill it than see it just remain vacant. So I mean, if we know that there's no one else, willing and able to fill it, I would do it.
Yeah. So, they unfortunately gave us like a day's notice. They sent the email to Chuck and I think, and we said, oh, well, we're going to have this seat we noticed, oh, we'll have this seat open. Is there going to be a push to have people that are associates? And they said, well, if there's an associate member that wants to move up, tell them to send me the application by the end of the day. It was like, well, it's great to have that amount of time. I don't know what it takes, understanding that a seat is open. I don't know, like, if it's a move that could be made beyond this application period. I feel like you should be able to do that, whether that any of the 3 associate members want to move into that position, because it seems silly to have a full associate member list and a seat just sitting open of a non-voting member, particularly in a situation tonight where, if we couldn't figure out a situation with Carl, like it would have been great to just start, because we can, we've got that extra option for a voting member. So,
I don't know if I'm asking something that's inappropriate here, but has any of the other associate members expressed interest?
I think Nicole is
that view.
Yeah, that's me. I haven't. I feel similarly to Scott, like I'm still, learning a lot about all of this and not quite ready. And just at the current time, being home with kids and also working, my plate is very full. So committing to more right now is kind of tricky for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry not to jump in again, but I mean, I would say again, if the seat is vacant, as in there's no one else that's applying and willing, I mean, I would certainly step into it. I do, I echo Nicola's words in the sense of full plate. I'm still learning the process, still learning about the regs, and I feel as though at least some additional time as an associate member to kind of just view the process, and it would be helpful. But again, if it's just going to remain vacant, I would step into it. I wonder if we could get some information from the select board on whether or not anyone else has expressed interest, or if they're going to fill it.
Yeah, I can. So what I can do, Scott, and I can talk to you offline about it. I can reach out to the select board, the interviewing committee, and see where they're headed. If that person, the other person they interviewed, if they had a direction they were going with it, or if it does seem like there's going to be a seat that's just going to remain open, and I can follow up with you.
Yeah, please do, because I don't want to see the vacancy just remain. I don't want to see the seat remain vacant. So if you talk to them and they say that they haven't really found a candidate, and it's also possible for me to go back to them and say, yes, I do want to become a full member, I would do that.
And what I can even just ask, beyond that is if that's a decision that has to be made, as part of this, or is there a way that we could go do that later on? So,
as in, does this need to happen now during the selection process, or could it happen, in a couple of weeks from now?
They've already appointed you, whether it's you or Nicola or Tay Evans, they've already appointed you guys associate members. Do they have issue if the commission at that point, I don't know all the rules around associate of could we be the ones that say, well, they're going to move into that slot? So.
Or what happens if someone were to resign, midway through their term? Would they allow someone else to step into their shoes, or has that happened in the past?
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened to you and John. So that's why you re-upped sooner than others. So it's a 3-year term, but you're going to pick it up from whoever's seat you filled.
Right. So that would lead me to believe that if this seat remains vacant, then it could be filled at any time. Right?
Yeah, I joined in the middle of the year into a term that was vacant, right?
Yeah,
No, I think all of you joined.
Everyone's, when they're up for a new term is on the website. And there's a lot of 2020 and 2021s. But yeah, you can look at the website and you can find out. So on the Conservation Commission page is where you'll find that.
So I'll just leave it this, you know, if the seat's going to remain vacant, I would fill it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up with the interviewing committee, Scott, and then I can talk to you again. So, okay.
All right. I think the only thing left, Mike, were you finished?
I'm all done.
So we're having a second meeting in June on the 24th. And one of the reasons why we need that is every June, second meeting, we have to vote for a new chair and vice chair. Mike and Anika can remain in that position, but they have to be voted back in. So we usually don't do anything special. We just ask at the next meeting, but I wanted everyone to know that at the next meeting, we will be going through this chair and vice chair process. And that term is for 1 year. That's all I had to say.
Yeah. And if anybody, has questions about that or wants to follow up with me, about what it is to be in either of those positions, just feel free to call me in between.
I would say that if someone steps into those positions, I would appreciate a very active chair and vice chair. Emails, conversation, talking about projects, reviewing whatever there is to review, but not just every 2 weeks. So that would help me a lot, because I'm ready to try to branch out and get some other things done in town, and it would be great to have some support from an active chair and an active vice chair. And by what I mean by active is to go to the select board, to go to the liaison, to talk to people and help us leverage what we have to for trails, for trees, for planting, for streams, for scout projects, things like that.
All right.
On the agenda, there's a question about the no dumping signs. Do we have an update about that?
Yeah, the no dumping signs, I have to just basically order those. I was working on that today, putting the final touches to the wording, but we're going to get 5 of those signs, and we're going to get 3 signs for Bear Meadow for the entrances. So mountain biking during this has been running the trails in Bear Meadow. There's been some jumps put in and some new trails cut through the woods. So it's on the fast track, and I felt like I had your permission already. So I'll probably have ordered those by tomorrow.
And 2 Chuck for Longfellow, right?
So the 5 includes whatever we want to put at Longfellow, and then there's extra. So if it's 3 or if it's 2, however it works. So.
That is still very active. I actually pulled over and spoke to someone who had a trunk full of brush, who was told by a neighbor probably 2 streets over that that's where they dump their waste.
That's another thing for Jane and Chris. And I was, I wanted them to actively manage that situation. It is the town's land. And what I got back was that they would allow me to put up a couple of signs. So it did slow down because of the situation we're in. But it can't be slow anymore because I also heard that they're very active. I have two commission members, one ex and one current commission member on that street, and it's still happening.
Mm-hmm. And I've said something before, but his hazards were on, and I was like, I know you don't live here, and I just couldn't drive by again. It was just so. But the official word in the street is that that's the town dump. So I don't know.
Need to get a big dog car.
So, what's really funny about this is it's not, and the property owner, it doesn't want to do anything about it. So it was pushed on to us. But we can put up signs, but it would be great if it was a united effort, and we could have the DPW helping us also, or whoever else. They're driving around all the time. People are down there. I recommend that if you see anyone, Alex, that you call the police.
Oh.
And because that's illegal to dump trash like that. I mean, that's not even like that. Any trash is any.
Well,
there's an aspect. Yeah. There's an aspect of this that it is the property owner's responsibility. Just like Zero Haverhill. If it needs to get to that point where,
because this isn't
come out and you need to fix it, right?
Because I obviously drive by it 10 times a day. I mean, there's obviously people that have their little handful of leaves. It's like, oh, okay, that's going to happen every day. But people literally pull over like it's the town dump, and I've seen it with brush full of their trailer. And that's when I said something, because it was just so egregious. I was like, oh my God, it was, so the signs I think will really help. So I'm anxious to get those up there. I can help put those in or something if you want. So.
Okay.
Okay. See you Tuesday.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I move we
We'll
adjourn.
start Can I hear a second?
Oh, second.
Flynn in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Carl Ciccone in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
David Panett in favor.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
In a couple weeks.